Donald Stojack's going to talk to a legend today, and I've known Camilla for a few years now, but um, when it comes to um, international stars, she's one of my friends that's an absolute international star. She has had music commissioned that she has played. She has had instruments commissioned that she plays. She has commissioned songs. She has written songs. She has played in some of the most prestigious concert halls in the world and alongside some of the most famous people. I could start throwing out names, but for a lot of us, they mean nothing. I read some of these names in the history books going through conservatory, and she actually got to work with them, in person. But Camilla, welcome.
Well, thank you, Donald. And just for the record, my friends there, I did not volunteer for this conversation here. I was drafted.
Ah, I'm looking for legendary people. And when it comes to
Yeah.
legends, I don't think I can think of anybody else that I would rather have on a call today. And I'm going to start off by asking you, Camilla, without too much aplomb, just to tell us, I gave you kind of a brief synopsis, but so what does that look like? How did you get there from a young girl trying to make money playing her flute on the streets of Germany to actually being where you are now?
That's a question I get asked a lot because I didn't go through the normal channels. But I think the short answer would be that I just kept pursuing what interested me, and I kind of
Hmm.
eliminated other things. So, for example, when I went to college, I wanted to be a music major. My parents thought I should take education just to fall back on in case I couldn't do, concerts and things. And I just thought, well, education teachers they don't need people that are just falling back on. They need passionate people that really want to be a teacher. And B, I couldn't see myself taking education courses and figuring out how to cut out little fish for the classroom or whatever.
Ah,
So I just kept doing other things. And then when I decided to come to Europe, which I did at some point, I applied for. I wanted to apply for Fulbright, and so I I went over to audition, and that was all fine. But then I had a 3-week delay on my return trip back to the States. And this is 1979, before email and telephoning is really expensive anyway, and letters and all that would work. But I was basically stranded in Europe for that time. And I was staying with a friend, and for 3 weeks, I couldn't stay there in the one-room apartment. So I stayed with a friend of a friend who happened to be an American trombonist who was playing for Stockhausen at the time. And he and his flute playing girlfriend, they taught me how to play on the street to make money. And I just thought like that was the most absurd thing I'd ever. I was in graduate school by that time and I just couldn't imagine it. But I did, and I made enough money to have my food while I was there, plus take some back. And in the meantime, I went with this trombone player to the rehearsals with Stockhausen. And so I met the whole Stockhausen troops, and his clarinetist was like me, a girl from the Midwest that wanted to go to Europe. And she encouraged me to come anyway, because in the meantime, because of this 3-week delay, I missed the deadline for the Fulbright, right? So, but I decided to come anyway because I knew I could make money playing on the street. So that's
mhm.
what I did. I came over with $200, and I was traveling then with a friend. I did not have the blessing of my parents because leaving and going to Europe also involved leaving a husband I'd married after college and divorced out of grad school. And that wasn't a nice thing to do in my otherwise intact family and community. So I was the first black sheep.
Mm.
So, but I went over and I thought, well, if it doesn't work out, I can come back and actually finish my doctorate. And but interesting things kept happening, and I was basically discovered and would get asked to play a Bach Brandenburg concerto, or oh, it's starting to rain. Why don't you come and teach at the music school here? Or so.
And you mentioned Stockhausen and Eric. Some of us on this call know that name and some don't, but it's like in business circles, it's like Tony Robbins. or or Jay Abraham. When she says Stockhausen, she's basically saying Tony Robbins. So she just, in other words, that's not a little thing. That's a big name that she just dropped there.
He was a major composer in the 20th century. Yeah.
Major chapter in my 20th century music history book in conservatory in my studies. Camilla, who are your heroes?
Well, he hadn't been one, for example. I just kind of stumbled into working with Stockhausen, but I didn't actually have heroes in that sense. Looking back, I see that I was always gravitating toward people that were operating slightly outside the box. And even my flute teachers were, one of them pointed out to me years later when I was saying, boy, I really had a kind of a zigzag career and this has been really different. She said, well, look at all the teachers you had. They were really weird. So I guess that was how that happened.
So you sought out weird people as role
People
models.
that didn't do things the normal way. I mean, what I wanted to do is, I was a good flutist, and I was, already at the age of, I don't know, 13, I was playing solo flute in my Grand Rapids Youth Symphony, and I stayed there for 6 years. So what you do actually is you go to Juilliard. That's the place you went there. And my parents wouldn't let me go to Juilliard because they wanted me to get a strong liberal arts education. And then for graduate school, then I could specialize. But no other time in my life would I be able to have such a broad base with philosophy, biology, government, languages. So I kind of protested, but in the event, it turned out to be a great decision because I went to Calvin College, which at that time had an amazing music department. A lot of people from my class are out there doing music. And I learned about everything from medieval music to Stockhausen, in fact, from my teachers there. And by the time I actually went to a master class with the Juilliard flutist, I was already interested in modern music because I had done all the normal repertoire. And I found out that the Juilliard people weren't actually so interested in that anyway. And also, because I hadn't been thrown into New York cutthroat competition at an early age, I had a great advantage because I was just a nice girl from the Midwest and I came to study with those guys and to see what they're doing. And I would play for Julie Baker, for example, at the time. And people say, well, how'd you do that? And I said, what? Well, you just play. I said, well, yeah. I mean, I'm here to learn. And it was just no big deal. In fact, I got a first master class just from playing in his master class because I could do it there without worrying about it. So
Well, in that period of time too, late 70s, even going into the early 80s, modern music was not a safe route. That was like walking off a cliff. I think we look in hindsight now and go, oh, that's kind of safe, but no, it was. I remember I was in a contemporary directions ensemble, and
cool.
yeah, I mean, but we would play to empty halls. I mean, was wonderful stuff, but nobody wanted to listen to it, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't this safe. It wasn't safe as a musician because you were going to starve because you couldn't play that at a Christmas party. You know what I mean? It
Yeah, but
just
I never thought of that. I never thought about what would be practical to earn a living. And
yeah.
in graduate school, I studied early music as well as contemporary music. But finally, I hung out more with the composers and played in galleries and did sculptures that play for.
Ah,
That was more interesting. So
yeah.
basically, it's always been about interest. It's not like, how am I going to make the most money here? I'm trying to
Mhm.
learn that now.
So the question is, who do you serve?
Yeah, that's always been a question because first it's been myself following my interests,
Okay.
but then what turns out whom I serve the best are people that I'm presenting things like musically.
Hmm.
It's music that I can stand behind, that I really feel like this is worthwhile playing, and I put
Hmm.
it in the room, and the effect is that people um, my goal and the effect is that they enter a different space. There's really no other way to
Mm.
describe it. It's just it's not about, the worst thing would be is like, oh, she plays good flute. I mean, that's not what I want to hear at the end. It's like, wow, that was an amazing thing. I was just somewhere else, because the music is a third thing. You earn your technique so that it doesn't get in the way, so it doesn't disturb the experience, right? But
Ah,
it's not the thing that's front and center. Front and center is getting out this music, and you need the audience to do it, and you need yourself, but you're out of the way and you're doing a third thing. Does that make sense?
yeah, and it's interesting. Some of the reviews I've read in the past that as I scoped you out, your interpretation of some of the modern music is very integrated, as opposed to sometimes some people will play modern music and they're very not connected to it. In other words, they're playing the notes, they're making the sounds, but it's not really a part of them. And you've had a capacity to truly make some of those composers' music come to life because you've been able to do that. And so the question is, how do you guide?
No, I didn't say AI. Oh my God.
Great.
How do you guide?
How do I what?
How do you guide?
How do I
How do,
guide?
yeah.
It's it reminded this whole idea about guiding. It's actually the first time I went back to my hometown in Grand Rapids and I played a completely avant-garde new music concert in our local auditorium, and my parents were there, and my father afterwards he said, well, how'd you do that? And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, nobody left. And I just thought, I mean, this is, how do I guide? I mean, I don't give them a chance. When I'm on the stage, I'm not thinking like, oh, I hope they like this. I'm just there presenting it. And this is, I'm serving, and I'm serving the music. I've chosen the program. I've made it an organic program. And so you guide by getting out of the way and just presenting it. That's the yeah, those things. It's like even being nervous. I've upset some students sometimes when I'm reminding them, if you're really nervous about, oh, how am I going to do, that's another form of egotism, actually, because you're thinking about you. You're not thinking about what you actually are there to do. You're there to serve. You're supposed to, if you're improvising, that's, again, you're letting it flow through you, or if you're interpreting written music, you're there to get that music out there. So get yourself out of it and don't be nervous. There's so many things to think about, you don't have time. So that's one way of guiding, I think.
Great. So, kind of, from this perspective, kind of going back, what was the spark that got this all started? Where were you when this really began? So take us back to that little girl that picked up
Third
the flute,
grade?
third grade,
Yeah.
and what was it?
My third grade teacher, she was so pretty, Joanne Campbell, and she would bring her flute into class. And I just thought that was the neatest thing. So the summer after third grade, I told my daddy I wanted a flute. And he wanted, and I also liked the piccolo. And he said, you sure it's just not just so cute that you. But anyway, they got me a flute, and it took me weeks to get a sound out, but I just really wanted to do it. So that was a spark. But I never had this. This is the other way that's so weird, because it wasn't like from a young age she just decided she was going to be a solo flutist. That wasn't it at all. I just kept playing because it was fun, and I'd rather band than study hall. But even when I came to Europe, I came to play in chamber music. I didn't have the idea of being a soloist. That wasn't my gear, my whole goal there. It turned out because the chamber music groups I were in just kind of kept falling apart. And at one point, someone said, "Oh, you should do this contest for solo flute music." I said, "Solo? Oh yeah, well I have this. Do this. I can just do." And I got a prize, and I started doing concerts with another soloist. But it was all accidental. But it was because I was given things that interest me, and that's what I kept doing. And I taught. I taught when I came here too, and I love to teach. So that's another thing.
What have you had to overcome along the way?
Being rejected by my parents, for one thing, making wrong
Mm.
choices about my partners, for another thing, and changing partners very often, coming to a foreign country without a mentor and having to establish myself, not knowing the language also and learning that. Yeah, those are some of the major things.
What did you have to become?
That's a hard one to answer because
Hmm.
so many things were just, for me, they were selbstverständlich. What is that? I took it for granted. You know, looking back, someone also said, well, you basically just did everything you wanted. And I never saw it that way, but I did. What I had to become is probably what a part of me already was. I was intent on following something that was interesting. And if it wasn't interesting and growing, I've always been interested. I've been reading self-help books for 40 years, right? So, and taking a lot of them to heart, because if something stopped developing, whether it's a relationship or a job or whatever, I would move on. I've never understood people that just stay there for whatever reason when it's not helping your growth. So I think what I've had to become is more conscious of it. I've struggled the whole time with Midwestern girl. I'm not really good enough. I only got this job because I'm nice, or there are so many demos that I didn't send out because I hit a wrong note in the third movement. And I'm looking back and thought, hey, I was really good actually. But, very, very self-critical. Eric knows what I'm talking about. With the distance, you can go, you look at it, you listen to the spirit of it, you listen to the overall thing. But what I've had to become is less critical in the moment and more accepting of that. Is, imposter syndrome is been a theme. I think I'm kind of over that now, but there's still times when you think, oh, well, should I do this?
I get asked that once in a while too, and I think even after all of these years, we all run into that. So, who helped shape you, Camilla?
My parents, the first thing. I respected them a lot. My father was a philosopher. He died in 2005. My mother is still alive at a very sharp 94. She was also a teacher. But then in school, my philosophy teachers, my English literature teachers, and then along the way when I came to Europe, well, and various flute teachers. Then I was brought up very conservatively, intellectual Christian in the kind of Presbyterian tradition. And when my marriage fell apart, I thought, I'm going to look for something else. So I went through a whole lot of other, I explored different religions, different paths, different spirit things. Never really throwing out the baby with the bathwater. But a lot of those experiences were also formulative, shall we say.
So
And
what shift? What?
Stockhausen, that I learned so much from Karlheinz Stockhausen because he had, besides this immense range of musical language. When I was working there, I could go through his library, and one of the books that I thought was most enlightening was called Sat Prem. No, Sri Oro. It was by Sat Prem, Sri Aurobindo, or The Adventure of Consciousness. Has anyone ever heard of this? Aurobindo? Yeah. I mean, he was somebody who he was Indian, but he studied in Oxford. He mastered like 7 Western languages and eventually went back to India and learned Sanskrit. And he developed a yogic praxis. His idea was to synthesize Eastern philosophy with Western psychology, and that made so much sense to me. It was kind of an all-encompassing thing. Somebody who knew both sides of the spectrum. So yeah, come to think of it, that was a really big influence for me.
So what shifted through all that?
Yeah, the buzzword in the 70s, early 80s was paradigm shift, right? And New Age and all that. My dad, we'd have so many arguments about that, like New Age and all this. And he'd give me books, debunking this and this and this. But what shifted is that I just saw the world from another perspective. There's another, actually, the other book, Susie Stevens, Stockhausen's clarinetist, had given me was Paramahansa Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. I found out later that Steve Jobs often gave that to all his people too. Yogananda. And he was another one. He was the first yogi to come to the West. And he also had studied Christ history and things like that. So it was a completely different way of looking things that we think are just obvious and evident in truth. And yeah, that helped a lot too. What shifted is that the world just became a really big place.
Hmm.
And I'm glad to be in it. It's great.
Yeah. What are the what, looking out at the horizon out there, what are the dangers? What are the dragons that are still out there that you're seeing in front of you? What's sitting out there that seems like it's just insurmountable?
Insurmountable. Yeah. This is a word we're trying to avoid, right?
Hmm.
But, I'm living in Germany and there have been lots of cuts to the cultural sector. Germany has generally been quite generous to their musicians and
Hmm.
supporting venues. So one of the insurmountable things is people are saying there's no money, and this is also true in academia and in Europe, in America. That's a
Hmm.
general attitude. And of course, there are a lot of wealthy people around, and there is money. The
Hmm.
is to how to get it to support what you're doing.
Hmm.
I think a possible dragon is starting to think too negatively about it.
Hmm.
And also succumbing to, well, this is how it's always been, so this is going to work. I think one has to be very, very careful about not getting in a rut and
Hmm.
keeping open for new ways if one door closes, etc.
Hmm.
But and the dragons would be to get upset about despondent. How are we going to earn the money? Happen.
Yeah. And so what does it look like there out there now? What is success feeling like now? How do you sit with that? What's your happily ever after here? You've gone through this huge, whirlwind life where you've gone from the streets of Germany to being mentored alongside of some of the names that some of us in music circles have read about in history books,
Hmm.
to being one of those people that has you know I mean, I've been on stage in Carnegie, but it's like, wow, right? I mean, so now what?
Well, I'm spending more time in Japan. That's another culture that I
Uh-huh.
really
Yeah.
liked and really, but yeah, the other thing is during COVID, well, this is where I met Donald, for those of you who don't know. I took Eben Pagan's coaching course because actually people were saying, oh, Camilla, you should write your memoirs. Just alone my partner changes would probably make a bestseller, but but I thought that actually I could be more useful. I could probably serve more people if I would take my experiences that I had and my dragons that I've already overcome, and that I could help other people, support other people along the way. Of course, when COVID opened up again, when concerts opened up, I went right back to practicing, and
Mhm.
so I still coach, but I haven't made as big of a business. But I think that the less I want to just travel anywhere, maybe I will also be doing more coaching.
Mhm.
So I've had many, many interests. That's another dragon, getting too distracted.
Mhm.
I could never focus just on one thing, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I think there are lots of things. There's coaching. I've been studying with Dawson Church to know
Mhm.
about meditating, how that changes
Mhm.
your brain. I'm fascinated by neuroplasticity. And I take to heart Jack Canfield's first principle of success, taking 100% responsibility for your life.
Mhm.
That's a real big one because a lot of people always say, well, no, I can't do it because there's always a reason. But I really do think that we we project a lot of things and make those kind of decisions. So
Mhm.
yeah, what it looks like right now is that it's kind of open, and it may not just be only concerts.
Hmm. Camilla Hoitenga, the out of the box person. I just don't put her in a box because she won't stay
Oh,
there.
oh,
It was there's a song. What's the guy? Oh, kind of a very irreverent singer. He always says, if you're going to put me in a box, make sure it's a big box. You know what I mean?
Oh, I don't know. That could be my theme song. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I must say, Donald, being with you and your and all my friends here, and some of the new people I don't know, it's also been really helpful to get everybody else's perspectives on things, because when you meet different people that who don't know what you're doing, and I don't know, and I haven't known what you're doing, we see that there's similarities in how we're trying to get on with our life, but a
Mhm.
lot of things that I think are just not so interesting or maybe interesting to somebody else. So it's always
Yeah.
it's good to have outside what do you call it, feedback. Yeah.
Always, always, always. I always was working with a group last week, and they're selling coaching and they're coaches. And I basically told them, if your coaches are not being coached, they're out of integrity. They're not doing what they're telling people to do,
Right.
which is receive guidance and input and stuff like that. So
I mean, it's still athletes have it all the time, singers have it all the time, but people having another pair of eyes and somebody just witnessing what you're doing, it helps you sort out your thoughts. It can put you on another thing. So
yeah.
there's a question here. How would you advise educators to combat the diminishing of music education and music in children's learning? That's an ongoing challenge, isn't it? And there are a lot of articles written about, even if Johnny's never going to play Carnegie Hall, this is what happens in his brain, and this is why music is so good and socializing. But it's like anything else, you have to figure out who the audience is and how did they respond. Do they respond to the scientific evidence, like look at, or if more of a general kind of thing that he's much more integrated with his fellow people. Johnny plays well with others. You know what I mean? You have to find the right language for communicating those, and that's I find that an ongoing challenge, even with my family, explaining what I'm trying to do. Sometimes it doesn't work, no matter what I say, right? If I use Christian language, that helps. That helps for a lot of translated, how I would say, as New Age concepts, but they've been around for a while. New Age is also like Egyptian or early Christianity, things like that. So yeah.
Camilla, would you be willing to make a statement to educators just right now, as a professional musician, about why it's so critical that we encourage music in the learning years, and how that affects the brain plasticity and how that affects their capacity to learn, whether they ever perform or not? My personal belief as an educator is we cannot do without the arts. We need music because it is an expression of that child's soul. Whether or not they're talented or not is a byproduct.
Well, yes, of course. The simple answer is yes, of course, I'm willing to make a statement like that anytime. The other thing is that
You would do it now, I would share it.
what do you mean? I mean,
You're being recorded. Just go for it, Camilla.
You are a professional flautist. You are renowned.
No, Kim, she's a professional flutist. She doesn't flout, she flutes.
Donald, you told me flautist yesterday. Sorry.
I know,
So
I was
sorry.
kidding you.
I'm blaming Donald
You
for
may.
my error on that.
Americans play flutes. The Brits still are hung up on flauts. So sorry, Anthony, but it's a leftover affectation from the turn of the last century.
So let me reframe that. As a professional musician and performer,
yes,
and someone who has seen the power of music in your life and has shared that gift, because your obligation as a talented musician is to share that gift.
Yes.
You singing in a vacuum does nobody any good. But you can communicate an energy, a love, a spirituality through music that cannot be communicated through any other medium. I firmly believe that. But I think that as educators, we need to hear that from the professionals, that this is not about making $1 million being on stage. This is about how a child learns and how we process knowledge.
I would just say I can second Dr. Kimberly Bonnickson's statement because
No, I say it all the time. I need your words, please.
well, my words would be the same that with the added idea for the people who think that music is not important. What if you took away all the music? What I wouldn't miss the elevator music necessarily, but maybe I would, who knows? But what about films? What about advertisement? What about singing around the campfire? What, it goes on. It doesn't even have to be high art, symphony, music is everywhere. And that it absolutely links people together. Even a discussion about whether you like it or not, it's still there. And for me, music has been really, in my flute, an instrument in the literal sense of the word. This has been my means whereby I've been forced to grow because I've been putting in different situations with different people, different countries, different cultures. And it's not, every culture has music, but you don't always understand a Japanese shakuhachi sound, but it's part of it, and it's part of being aware in the world, and it does connect people. Musicians here are all over the place. In Cologne, we have just from I don't know how many countries, people coming together to play, right? So it's extremely important on a community level, on a brain level, on a development level. Does that help?
That's what I needed.
Woo-hoo.
Woo!
Any other comments or questions for Camilla?
I haven't read the chat here yet.
I never read the chat, Camilla. If they, I don't don't go to the chat. They've got to come live and ask a question.
Okay. I saw Carly breaking boxes. That's I knew that. I knew that.
We knew that about Carly. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I talk about in NLP is anchoring, and music is a huge thing with anchoring. For example, if you hear a song from your childhood, it takes you back not only to that memory, but you start to feel the emotion that you were feeling. Like maybe if you went through a difficult breakup or something, you hear that song and your emotion gets there, or you had a wonderful experience in your childhood and you hear that song and you begin to feel that emotion. Maybe you were close to someone that used to like that song and you begin to feel close to this person because that music brings you back to the state. So, I mean, you think about, Donald had mentioned Tony Robbins earlier, and you go to a Tony Robbins seminar, and what does he play? Music that gets people jumping and puts them in this peak state. Music has the ability to control what state we feel. So whenever I'm feeling down, I'll throw on music that I want to listen to for that moment. So I think that's something.
And I think as a doctor of music, I have to also add that music has different roles. And there are times when the music is affirming and it's community. It's like playing folk songs and everybody knows it. And it's time when there's sometimes when music should be challenging or uplifting, and you have to be a little more active listener to do this. That's just a very general thing. But as you said, you can go up and down and you can use it for different things. Some cultures don't even distinguish between concert music. It's all things, different purposes for work or play or whatever.
Let me ask you a totally different question. We go in another direction, ADD boy here. So when you learn a piece, what is the easiest way for you to learn it? Do you sit and look at the written page of music and say, okay, I know what that says, I can play it? Or do you have to hear it first and then say, oh, now I hear how I want that to go? Or is there like a combination? Because for me, when I was taking piano lessons as a child, and I used to always con my piano teacher into playing the song, and then I knew how to play it, rather than use the music because I had a harder time reading the music.
Hmm. Well, Tony, that's one way. In my profession, in my specialty, most of the music I've been given has never been played before. It's been written specially for me. So I'm out of luck if I want to hear it before I play it. I have to decipher the score and figure out what is the musical language there. Of course, I can draw on parallels or other people's works, but and when I teach, I basically try to get them to decipher it, and depending on the age and the kind of person it is, sometimes I will play it for them, but I would always advise that first, if you have a general idea, then work it out yourself, and because otherwise you're going to get locked into copying something. Yeah, I've had so many. When I was teaching at the conservatory in Duisburg, I made the mistake in the beginning of not having people sight read, and I had these virtuoso students from Korea just playing circles around fantastic pieces. And then when I'd get them in the lessons and give them a new piece, they wouldn't know how to play literally from A to B because they had just imitated their teacher and gotten that up just perfectly for the audition. From then on, I insisted that sight reading be a part of the auditions, which is not a tradition in Europe, actually. So anyway.
So something that you can encourage,
We shouldn't
and
go music.
I would encourage anyone. Oh, I'm sorry. You were saying something, Camilla?
Just saying that I don't really want to get to music lessons here. So,
Yeah.
but go ahead.
Yeah, I would encourage anyone to start at any point in their life. I know a lot of us here are musicians.
How many
But
musicians? I mean, I know you are. Great. Yeah. Cool.
those who don't, it's never too late to start. And I'll use two examples in movies. Anyone ever see Amadeus, with F. Murray Abraham and Tom Hulce? Tom Hulce did not know how to play piano before that movie. He learned to play the piano for the movie. And there's a scene where he's playing upside down on the piano, lying on his back, and he actually played that. So here was someone who learned the piano and played that brilliantly just for the movie. And the same thing most recently, the movie with Timothy Chalamet playing Bob Dylan. He didn't know how to play guitar or harmonica or sing. He learned it just for the movie. So that just tells you if an actor can learn an instrument just to play a part in the movie, can anyone start at any time in their life to learn not only music but anything in life? And I think that's something that that what you've talked about today in your story, well, we can take away from that. That if we have a passion for anything, then why not start?
Yeah.
Anyone else? Very good call today, Camilla. Thank you so much. This was a great time.
Thank you.
Inspiring.
Thank you. It's great to go through it all. So